I never imagined I'd be here, sitting in a quiet house that doesn't feel like home anymore, remembering the time I was pregnant with my sister's baby and still technically married to David. We've been separated for months, yet the divorce papers haven't finalized because of the 12-month waiting period. I thought I understood what growing apart meant, but I had no idea how complicated things could get until I made this choice. It started with Millie and Aaron. My twin sister and her husband had been trying for a child for years, and every failed attempt weighed heavily on them. I knew how much they wanted a baby, and the thought of being able to help them felt like a way to do something meaningful, something selfless. Being their surrogate seemed like a natural choice. After all, Millie and I were identical twins. The baby would be hers, in a way, even if it grew inside me. For weeks, I waited. I thought about David and our fragile relationship, the kids, and the home we shared. But I told myself that since we were separated, it wouldn't matter as much. I could do this quietly, without dragging him into the decision. I wasn't trying to hurt him. I truly believed he would eventually understand. When I finally told him, I realized immediately that I had underestimated his reaction. He stared at me, speechless, as if I had just announced something absurdly impossible. "You're serious?" he asked finally, his voice tight with disbelief. "Yes," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I'm carrying Millie and Aaron's baby. I want to help them." David's reaction was worse than I expected. He ran a hand through his hair, shaking his head. "And you didn't think to talk to me first?" I hesitated, unsure how to explain myself. "It's my body, my choice. I know it's not what you expected, but I thought. You thought I'd just be okay with this?" His voice rose, a mixture of anger and hurt. "We're married, and you just decided behind my back?" I wanted to explain, to make him see that this wasn't about abandoning him or our family. I wasn't trying to hide it forever. I wanted to avoid an argument. I thought this was the right thing to do for Millie and Aaron. "You made your choice," he said finally, his voice low but tense. "Don't expect me to be okay with it." And just like that, the tension settled between us. Weeks passed. I began the process, and soon enough, I was pregnant. The reality of what I had done started hitting me in waves. I had wanted to help my sister, but in doing so, I had pushed David further away. When I told him about the pregnancy, he barely reacted. A nod, a grunt, and then he left the room. 2 days later, I learned he filed for divorce. The gravity of my decision hit me harder than anything I had imagined. I had tried to do something good, and now I was watching my own marriage crumble. Millie and Aaron were ecstatic. They visited often, planning, shopping, and sharing their excitement. Being around them was bittersweet. I wanted to be happy for them, but every visit reminded me of what I had lost at home. David's trust, his presence, the quiet comfort of our family. David, on the other hand, grew colder and more distant. He avoided conversation and interaction with me, and any attempt I made to reach out was met with polite but sharp dismissal. The house felt like a battlefield I didn't know how to navigate. Every smile I forced, every effort to appear normal, was just a mask for the isolation I felt inside. I began to notice the kids, too. They were confused, hesitant, and I could see them trying to figure out why their father had withdrawn from our home, why he seemed so distant. It was heartbreaking to watch, and it made me question my choices every single day. One afternoon, as I sat alone in the living room, the phone rang. My heart skipped. It was David. For a fleeting second, I imagined he was calling to bridge the gap, to reconcile, maybe even to discuss what I had done. "Rose," he said, voice cold and controlled, "we need to talk." I swallowed hard. "About what?" "This arrangement. Your pregnancy. You didn't think about what it would do to our family. To me." "I did think about it," I said softly. "I thought it through. I didn't want to hurt you. But Millie, she needed me. She's my sister. I had to help." There was a long silence. Then he spoke again, his voice tight, almost breaking. "I know you think it's noble, but all I feel is that you chose them over me. Over us. Over everything we had together." His words cut deep. He was right in a way. I had changed. I had prioritized my sister's happiness over our marriage, over my own family. And now, I was watching the consequences unfold. The months dragged on, and David's distance became avoidance. He slept in a separate room, rarely spoke, and left the house early for work, returning late. The children noticed the emptiness, and it broke my heart to see their confusion. I tried to focus on them, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy, but I was constantly reminded of my choices and their consequences. Millie continued to visit almost daily, and I realized the joy I had once felt for her had begun to mix with guilt and a strange envy. She didn't have to face the tension at home. She didn't have to watch the man I loved drift further away. I wanted to be happy for her, but I couldn't escape the feeling that I was failing everyone I cared about. One morning, David confronted me while I was making breakfast. His face was unreadable, but I could feel the weight of his words before he even spoke. "Rose," he said quietly, "we need to figure out where we're going with all of this." I froze, the frying pan in my hands. "Where we're going?" "You know what I mean," he said, rubbing his temples. "This pregnancy, helping Millie, it's affecting everything. Us, the kids, this house. I can't keep living like this." "I didn't do this to hurt you," I said softly. "I did it because she needed me. Because we're family." He shook his head. "And yet, every time I look at you, I feel like I'm watching someone else. Someone who doesn't care about our family anymore. Someone I don't recognize." His words pierced me. I had lost sight of what mattered most, caught up in trying to do the right thing for someone else. Now I had to face the cost of my choices. Weeks passed. The silence in the house became suffocating. I realized that my bond with Millie, once comforting, was now a source of tension. I loved her, but I had crossed boundaries I could never undo. Every time I visited her, I felt guilty for neglecting my own children, for pushing my husband further away. Finally, I knew I couldn't wait any longer. I needed to confront the reality of our situation with David. I found him in the living room, sitting with his laptop, pretending to work. I sat down across from him, hands clenched tightly in my lap. "David," I began, voice trembling, "I know I've hurt you. I know I've made mistakes, and I don't expect forgiveness right away. But I need you to know, I never wanted to lose you. I never wanted to hurt this family." He looked at me, eyes soft yet wary. "Rose, intentions don't erase the pain, do they?" "No," I admitted, tears prickling my eyes. "I've been so focused on helping Millie that I lost sight of what was most important. Us, our family." He was silent, then spoke slowly. "I still love you, Rose. But love isn't always enough. Trust is fragile. And right now, I need to see that you're committed to this family, not just in words but in actions." I nodded, determination settling in. "I understand, David. I promise to do everything I can to make things right. I'll put this family first." The weeks that followed were cautious. I tried to show him I was committed, helping with the kids, giving Millie some space, focusing on home life. Slowly, the tension eased. But the path ahead was still uncertain. When the baby finally arrived, a small, quiet celebration took place. David held the newborn in his arms, and for the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. It wasn't perfect, but maybe, just maybe, we could begin to rebuild. The first few weeks after the baby's arrival felt almost surreal. I watched David hold the newborn with a careful tenderness that made my chest ache. It was the same man I had married, the same man I had loved for nearly 2 decades, but now, every touch, every glance, was tinged with caution. I wanted to believe we could rebuild, but deep down, I knew the distance that had grown between us wasn't going to disappear overnight. I tried to focus on the kids, our children, giving them my attention, my care. I tried to maintain normalcy in the house, preparing meals, helping with homework, keeping routines as steady as possible. But no matter what I did, I felt the pull of Millie's world, the little life growing under my skin that belonged to her. It started innocently enough. I would check in more often, send messages, share ultrasound pictures, updates on the baby's kicks, the little hiccups, and moments that felt monumental to me. Millie was always thrilled, grateful for every detail I shared. I wanted her to feel the bond, to feel the excitement and love I carried for her child. But each message, each visit, reminded me that my focus was shifting away from my own home, my own children, and my husband. David noticed it almost immediately. At first, he kept quiet, hoping I would balance my attention, that I would recognize the strain I was putting on our family. But over time, his frustration grew. One evening, I had spent nearly an hour on the phone with Millie, laughing and discussing nursery colors and baby clothes. David walked in from work, his eyes narrowing as he observed me animatedly talking, unaware of his presence. "Rose," he said, voice low but firm. "How long is this going to continue?" I froze mid-laugh, fumbling for an excuse. I was just updating Millie.
About the baby.
It's important to me that she feels involved. He sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. I get it. You want to help your sister. I understand that. But what about us? What about the kids here, in this house? Don't they deserve the same attention? Or have they become invisible to you now? His words hit me harder than I expected. I had thought I could manage both worlds, but clearly I was failing. I wanted to defend myself, to explain that it didn't mean I loved my children less, that it didn't mean I had stopped caring about David, but the truth was, I didn't know how to stop. Millie's excitement, her gratitude, the way she relied on me, it was intoxicating, in a way that made ignoring it impossible. Days turned into weeks, and my visits to Millie increased. I justified them as necessary, as part of my role in helping her and Aaron, but each time I left my home, I felt the weight of David's silent disapproval pressing against my back. The kids started noticing, too. They would ask why I was always away, why I spent so much time with Aunt Millie, and not enough time with them. "Mom," my daughter said one afternoon, eyes wide and innocent. "Why do you go to Millie's so much? Aren't we enough?" Her words cut deeper than anything David had said. I knelt down, brushing her hair back gently. "Sweetheart, it's not about being enough. I want to help your Aunt Millie. She needs me. But we need you too," my son whispered, and for a moment, the room felt suffocating. I hugged them tightly, feeling the guilt gnawing at me. David's frustration was growing alongside my own tension. He tried talking to me calmly at first, about boundaries, about the importance of focusing on our own family, but I was blind to it. I thought I could balance everything. I thought love for one person didn't have to take away from another. But the cracks in our home were widening, and he was losing patience. One evening, I returned from Millie's with bags of baby clothes and gifts. I set them down in the living room, buzzing with excitement to show David and the kids. David looked up from his laptop, eyes dark. "Another trip?" he asked, voice tight. "Rose, how many more times are you going to run back and forth? How much of your attention is left for this family?" I just wanted to make sure everything is ready," I said softly. "It's important to me. It's important to you," he said sharply, standing up. "What about what's important to this family? To me? To our kids? Every time you leave, every time you're gone, I feel like you're choosing them over us. And I can't keep living like this." I opened my mouth to respond, to tell him it wasn't about choosing, that I still loved him, that I still loved our kids, but the words felt hollow. I knew he was right. I was constantly torn between two worlds, and in doing so, I was failing both. From that moment, the tension in the house became unbearable. I wanted to fix it, wanted to reconcile, but I was addicted to the connection with Millie, to the sense of purpose I found in being part of her baby's life. David's anger was quiet now, simmering beneath the surface, but I could feel it in every glance, every wordless meal, every night he spent in the other room. The kids began withdrawing too. They no longer asked questions about Aunt Millie, sensing that their concerns might provoke another argument. I watched them silently, guilt gnawing at my heart. And yet, I couldn't stop myself. Every time I was near Millie, every time I felt the baby kick, a rush of love and responsibility overwhelmed me. I rationalized it, telling myself that this was for someone else, that I was doing something selfless. But in reality, I was neglecting my own family. David tried again. He asked me to limit my visits, to focus on our home, our children, our marriage. But I argued, pleaded, explained that it was only temporary, that it wouldn't hurt anyone. Deep down, I knew I was lying to him, to myself, and most importantly, to the children who relied on me. Finally, one evening, he reached his breaking point. I had returned late from Millie's, hands full of baby gifts, and found him sitting in the living room, waiting. His eyes were hard, filled with a mix of sorrow and anger. "Rose," he said, voice low but firm, "I can't do this anymore. You keep choosing them over us. Over your own children. I've tried to be patient, tried to understand, but I can't. I can't watch you disappear into their world while our home falls apart." Tears welled up in my eyes. "David, I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't mean to hurt the kids. You just what?" he interrupted, his voice rising slightly. "You just want to live in their world, not ours. You can't see it because you're so focused on being needed elsewhere. But I see it. I see you neglecting this family for a baby that isn't even ours." I felt my heart shatter. I wanted to cry, to beg, to explain that it wasn't about neglecting them, that I loved my children, that I loved him, but the words wouldn't come. I had crossed a line I couldn't uncross. David stood, his shoulders tense, his expression resolute. "Rose, I've tried. I've been patient, but this isn't working. You need to be where your priorities lie. You want to be with them? Then be with them. I'll take care of our children here. I'll manage. But this house, this family, I can't share it with someone who keeps leaving it behind."
His words hit me like a blow.
I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. He wasn't angry in a fleeting way, he was done. There was no room for negotiation, no hope for compromise. "I'm serious, Rose," he said, softer now but unwavering. "You can go be with your sister. I'll stay here, and I'll raise our children. You made your choice. Now live with it." I felt my knees weaken, tears streaming down my face. I realized, finally, that I had lost him. Not because of betrayal in the traditional sense, but because I had refused to see what was happening to the family I claimed to love. That night, I sat in my empty house, staring at the baby clothes I had brought from Millie's, thinking of the choices I had made. I loved this baby, but the cost had been everything I once held dear. David had given me one last chance, and I had failed. The next morning, he packed a few things for the kids and himself and quietly said, "I'll be downstairs if you want to say goodbye. But don't expect me to argue or plead anymore. You made your choice." I watched him leave, my chest aching with regret.
I knew he was right.
I had prioritized someone else's happiness over my own family, over my own children, and now I was left with the reality of my actions. I called Millie that afternoon, eager for comfort, for reassurance that what I had done was meaningful. But even as I talked to her, I realized that no amount of joy or gratitude from her could fix the hole in my own life. The home I had once cherished, the husband I had loved, and the children I had promised to nurture, they were all slipping away because of my inability to balance love, duty, and desire. I could feel the weight of my choices settling on my shoulders like a stone. The house was quiet, the children asleep upstairs, and I was left alone to contemplate the life I had sacrificed in the name of helping someone else. I had thought I was doing something noble, but all I had done was fracture the family I was supposed to protect. The house felt emptier than ever. David had left for the night, taking the kids with him to his parents' place. I sat in the living room, surrounded by the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the clock, feeling the weight of my choices settle deeper into my chest. Every room I looked at reminded me of what I had lost: the laughter of the kids, the warmth of our family, the quiet intimacy I once shared with David. And yet, despite it all, I felt the pull toward Millie's world stronger than ever. I told myself it was only natural. I was carrying her child. I was helping her fulfill a dream she had wanted for years. But the truth was, it was becoming an obsession. I visited her nearly every day, stayed for hours, and shared every little detail about the baby, every little movement, every tiny hiccup. I wanted her to feel that connection, wanted to be part of something that mattered so deeply. But in doing so, I was leaving my own children behind. They were growing up in a quiet house, watching their mother become a stranger who came and went without explanation, without focus, without care. I could see it in their eyes when I visited. My daughter would ask, "Mom, why do you leave us so much?" And my son would remain silent, but his shoulders slumped, his small hands clenched in quiet frustration. David had made his stance clear. He had tried to reason, to set boundaries, to bring me back to the family I had promised to protect. But I was too blind, too wrapped up in the world of a baby that wasn't mine. And every time he tried to confront me, every time he tried to make me see the neglect I was creating, I pushed him away, arguing that I was doing something meaningful, something noble. One afternoon, I visited Millie, carrying a basket of baby clothes and small toys I had handpicked. She greeted me with that radiant smile that always made me feel like I was doing the right thing. "Rose, you're here. And look at this, I found some tiny mittens for the baby." I smiled, hiding the weight in my chest. I wanted to bring a few things for the nursery, little touches that might help make it feel like home for the baby. We spent hours arranging clothes, planning the nursery, and laughing over the baby names we liked. I was consumed by the process, completely lost in the world we were creating together. But as I glanced at the clock, I realized it was late afternoon. My kids would be home soon, expecting dinner, expecting their mother to be present, expecting me. I felt the familiar pang of guilt, but it didn't stop me from lingering longer, rearranging clothes, making little blankets, and imagining the day the baby would be born. Millie noticed my hesitation. "Rose, you should probably go home. Your kids miss you," she said softly. "I know," I whispered, unable to meet her eyes. I want to make sure everything is perfect." Her gaze softened, but I could sense her subtle frustration. "Rose, you're going to miss more than just perfection. You're missing moments with your own kids. Don't let this consume you completely." I nodded, guilt twisting inside me. But as I left her house, carrying the basket of baby clothes, I couldn't help but feel that I was doing the right thing. I justified it to myself. The kids would understand later, David would forgive, and Millie needed me. But the cracks in my family were growing wider, and no amount of justification could fill the emptiness I left behind. Back at home, the silence was oppressive. I placed the basket down, thinking about the conversation Millie and I had, and I realized I had reached a crossroads. I could either continue on this path, visiting Millie constantly, losing the family I had left, or I could try to focus on my own children and repair what I had damaged. But the pull was too strong. The baby was alive inside me, moving and kicking, and I felt a sense of responsibility that overshadowed everything else. I found myself leaving the house again the next day, this time for a longer visit, justifying that Millie needed me to help prepare the nursery. And every day, I lost a little more of my presence in my own home, a little more of the connection with my children, a little more of David's patience. It didn't take long for him to realize that I wasn't going to stop. He tried talking to me, calmly at first. "Rose," he said one evening when I returned from Millie's, "how many more times are you going to do this? The kids need you. I need you. You're choosing them over us again, and I just can't keep doing this." "I'm helping Millie," I said, my voice trembling. "She needs me. I'm carrying her baby. It's important." David's expression hardened. "What about the ones here, Rose? What about your children?
What about me?"
You're ignoring everything you promised to protect." His words struck me with the force of truth. I knew he was right, but I couldn't stop myself. Every visit to Millie felt like purpose, like a mission I couldn't abandon. And every time I returned home, I felt the weight of David's disapproval, the silent judgment in his eyes, and the cold distance that had become our norm. Weeks turned into months. I continued to go to Millie's, sometimes for hours, sometimes for the entire afternoon. The kids would wait, expectant and disappointed, and David would sit in the living room, trying not to explode with frustration. I could feel him watching me, every step, every action, measuring how much I had chosen them over him, over us. Finally, one night, after returning from another long visit, I found David waiting, his face set in that unyielding expression I had come to dread. He spoke slowly, deliberately. Rose, he began, voice low but firm. I've tried to be patient. I've tried to understand. But this can't go on anymore. You keep leaving, keep choosing them over us, over our children. I've had enough. Tears filled my eyes, my throat tight with words I couldn't voice. David, I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't mean to neglect our children. You just what? He interrupted, his voice rising slightly. You just keep prioritizing someone else's family over your own. Over your kids. I can't watch this happen anymore. I felt my heart shatter. I had justified my actions, convinced myself I was doing the right thing, but the reality was undeniable. I had lost him. I had lost the family I had promised to protect. David took a deep breath, his shoulders tense. Rose, I've made my decision. You can continue to go to Millie's, continue to help with her baby. But I'm done here. I'll take care of our children myself. You want to be with them?
Fine.
But this house, this family, this life we had, it's over. His words hit me harder than anything else. There was no anger, no negotiation, just clarity and finality. He was leaving, not out of hate, but out of necessity, for the children, for himself, for the life he had tried to maintain in the chaos I had created. I fell to my knees, tears streaming down my face. David, please. I can fix this. I can. No, he said softly, but with an unshakable resolve. You've made your choice, Rose. Now live with it. Go to Millie's, raise her baby, be there for her. I'll take care of our children here. That's the only way this family can survive. I wanted to scream, to cry, to beg him to stay, to let me make amends, but the truth was too clear. I had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. I had prioritized someone else's life over my own family, and now I was left to face the consequences alone. That night, I sat in the quiet house, staring at the empty rooms, the children's toys scattered on the floor, and the memories of laughter and warmth that had once filled these walls. I realized, finally, that my desire to help someone else had cost me everything I truly loved. David was gone, the kids were distant, and I was left with nothing but my own choices and their repercussions. I picked up my phone and called Millie, but even as I spoke to her, shared the excitement of the upcoming birth, I couldn't escape the hollow feeling in my chest. The life I had built, the love I had nurtured, the family I had promised to protect, it was all gone. And the baby, so tiny and perfect inside me, was a reminder of the cost of my obsession, of my inability to balance love and duty, of the family I had chosen to leave behind. The days after David's final decision were some of the hardest I had ever faced. The house felt impossibly empty, almost alien. I had thought I could manage it all, my role in Millie's life, the baby I carried, and my own family. But reality had a way of catching up, and now I was left alone to confront the consequences of my choices. I spent the first morning after his departure wandering through the house, touching the furniture, the walls, the remnants of the life we had shared. The kids' rooms were silent, their toys scattered but untouched. I felt a pang of guilt every time I thought of them. They were safe with David, yes, but the warmth and love of their mother had been absent for too long, and I had brought it upon myself. I tried to distract myself with Millie. She welcomed me with open arms, grateful for everything I did for her and the baby. But even in her home, I felt the hollow ache of my own family's absence. I laughed when she laughed, helped with nursery decorations, and shared every little flutter and movement of the baby growing inside me. But deep down, I knew that none of it could fill the void I had created in my own life. The phone calls from my children were short and cautious at first. My daughter's voice trembled as she asked when I would come home. My son remained quiet, but I could hear the disappointment in his words. David spoke to me calmly but firmly, reiterating his decision. I could continue to visit Millie and help with the baby, but our home, our children, and our life together were now under his care. The weight of his words hit me harder each time. I realized, with a sharp clarity, that my actions, though intended to be noble, had been selfish. I had convinced myself that helping Millie was the right thing, but in doing so, I had neglected my own family. I had prioritized someone else's happiness over my own children's well-being. And now I was alone to face it. I began to reflect on the months that had led to this point. The early excitement, the secretive visits, the constant messages and updates to Millie, the moments I had stolen away from my own children, they all came rushing back, unfiltered and raw. I saw myself in those moments, a woman who wanted to do good, yes, but who had allowed obsession and misplaced priorities to consume her. Millie noticed my change in mood. One afternoon, as I sat quietly folding tiny baby clothes, she placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Rose, what's wrong? You've been quiet lately." I looked up at her, tears brimming in my eyes. I've lost so much, Millie. I thought I was doing something good, something meaningful, but I've lost my family. I've lost David and the kids. I've neglected them, and I can't get that back. Her expression softened, but I could see the subtle concern in her eyes. "Rose, you're doing what you can. The baby is lucky to have you, and so am I. But maybe it's time to think about yourself too, and the family you left behind." Her words stung. She was right. I had been so consumed with helping her and being part of the baby's life that I had completely lost sight of my own responsibilities, my own children, my own husband. Days turned into weeks. I continued to help Millie, but the reality of David's absence weighed heavily on me. I could no longer ignore the emptiness, the quiet moments when the house should have been filled with laughter, with conversation, with the presence of my family. I missed the small things, the bedtime stories, the shared meals, the casual hugs for my children. And I knew that David had done what I couldn't. He had taken responsibility for our children, given them stability and care when I had failed. One evening, I returned from Millie's, feeling the familiar pang of guilt, and found a note from David. It was brief, written in his careful handwriting. "Rose, I hope you understand that this is what is best for the children. I love them, and I will continue to care for them. You have chosen your path. Live with it. David." I folded the note in my hands, tears streaming down my face. The finality of it hit me with a force I couldn't escape. He had made his decision, and he wasn't coming back. I had driven a wedge too wide, crossed lines that couldn't be uncrossed, and now I was left with the consequences. The realization brought a deep, aching regret. I had wanted to help, to do something meaningful, to create joy for someone else, but in the process, I had lost the very people I had promised to protect and love. The life I had once known, the life I had built with David and our children, was gone. And no amount of justification or explanation could change that. I began to withdraw, spending more time in quiet reflection. The visits to Millie became fewer, not because I no longer cared, but because the weight of my actions had become unbearable. Each time I left her home, I felt the echo of David's words, the silent disappointment in my children's eyes, and the empty house I had once filled with love. I started to write in a journal, documenting my thoughts, my regrets, my mistakes. I wrote about the baby, about Millie, about the joy I had felt, and the obsession that had overtaken me. I wrote about David, about the children, about the love I had lost and the trust one had broken. And as I wrote, I began to understand the depth of my failure, the cost of my choices, and the importance of responsibility, balance, and perspective. The baby was born soon after, a beautiful, tiny life that brought joy and tears in equal measure. I held the baby, whispered promises of love and care, but I knew that no amount of affection could repair the damage I had done to my own family. I had been given a second chance in some ways, a chance to be present for this child, but in my own home, the family I had once known was gone. David had made his choice clear. I could continue my role in Millie's life, but the children, the house, and the family we had built were his responsibility now. And I understood that fully. I had wanted to do good, but I had failed in my most important duty, being a mother and a wife to my own children, a partner to my husband. I learned, in the harshest way possible, that good intentions could not replace presence, that love without balance could destroy what it sought to preserve, and that some choices had consequences too heavy to undo. I held the baby close, feeling a mixture of joy and sorrow. knowing that I had helped create life, but also knowing that I had lost the life I once knew. And in that moment, I whispered a promise to myself. I would never forget the lessons I had learned. I would carry this responsibility with humility, with awareness, and with the knowledge that some things, some people, cannot be replaced or repaired once lost. I had chosen my path. I had faced the consequences. And I would live with them, carrying the weight of my choices and hoping that someday I could find a way to honor both the life I had helped bring into the world and the family I had left behind.